Okay. So, great writing, its primary focus is on essay writing. Now, of course, one of the units is going to focus entirely on the process of writing an essay, but the first unit, of course, wants to focus on what an essay is at its core. So, Frank, you've told me before, um, and since we do have a lot of us, hopefully we'll figure out a rhythm, but if we need to do hand raising, we will. But let's pick on you first, Hanyu. Hanyu, what is an essay, if you wouldn't mind giving me your best definition or explanation?
An essay is kind of like it's like you you an essay writing means it's you kind of like write a story or anything like a document, something like that.
Okay, it's close. You can
Just
have narrative essays that tell stories, but they're going to be a little different than
research. There's
story.
all research and narrative. There's all like folktale. It's just it's just like a draft or of
Well, a draft is one of the stages in the writing process, yeah. And a folktale is a type of story, typically a narrative or some form of oral tradition that's been written down at some point.
I
So
guess essay is just writing.
it is certainly writing based. It's going to be a structured form of writing that typically explores a specific topic, idea, concept. Um, it may attempt to try and convince or persuade you. It
Or
may,
inform.
pardon me,
Inform.
inform,
Inform.
exactly. So that would be expository writing. We have our four basic writing types. And for every basic writing type, we have your basic form of essay, and then you've got your mix of when you start to incorporate your four writing types. Um, and then we have formal and informal writing, so you can have formal and informal essays. um,
Solve
oh,
this issue. He's coming.
perfect, excellent. All right, so we've started already. But I've also got the same question for you as well, Jason, if you can. If you would be able to, what's your best definition or explanation of what an essay is?
Uh, an essay is barely an paragraph or a piece of writing that is formed by many paragraphs, tries to entertain or tells you to do something.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah. We do want that
It is
series.
likely it is likely when you're like it is likely like a claim, like you're trying to convince somebody to do
Mm,
something. For example, at an essay, the first sentence of the essay is gonna be like, for example, uh, exercising are very good for your body. You should get more exercise every day than just being a couch potato at your house.
yeah.
And then that's the introduction, and and then you have to write each paragraph. Each paragraph will contain a topic sentence and some little supporting details that conforms the readers about why exercise is very important. This is just an example, so
Yeah. It's actually spot on. It's very good. And hopefully we'll be able to learn slightly more complex structure, but yeah, that is exactly how we formulate our essays. And then when we talk about the process that we go through, because some people they have difficulty starting up writing their essays. Um, I know for myself, I had difficulties writing essays until at least writing them was uncomfortable
oh
until
yeah,
about grade
one
nine,
more
maybe.
thing.
Yeah.
Essay actually the introduction is the most important part of an essay. You are I think we already see that the page says hook. is the introduction of the thingy. So what do you mean hook is to get something on somebody's things and pull it into you, right? So
Yes,
hook
typically.
in this place, it means that your introduction needs to use like many kind of those, good words and those, figurative languages and similes and metaphors to help you and make
Okay.
this whole
Yeah.
thing good.
The use
Wait,
of literary devices would be helpful when writing.
wait a second. He's having a problem again.
Okay. Can he not just sit beside you? Although me and my sister wouldn't be able to do that, so I understand. As we wait for them, yeah, so let's take a basic look at a breakdown of an essay. Now, this particular essay outline was designed, I mean, all essays are going to follow a similar format, but the parts of that essay we would call by different names. But every essay is broken down into introductory paragraphs, or in your case, you're only going to have to worry about one singular introductory paragraph. There's James.
Hi.
And then you'll always have your body paragraphs and then a concluding paragraph. So this is going to be similar to even your basic paragraph itself that has an introductory sentence, your detail sentences, typically 3 for a formal paragraph, and then your final, sentence, your concluding sentence, making 5. That's why we have that formal structure of formal essay, which would be 5 paragraphs. You can have your mini essay, which is a condensed version of the 5-paragraph essay. So as we go through here, now this is research essay outline. This outline applies to quite a few things, and I will show you. Do I have it on this page? Yeah, I do. So I'll show you also like the basic way we subdivide any kind of argument or persuasion Gesundheit. Okay, so when we start off our essays, we typically want to make sure that our reader is paying attention. And as Jason pointed out, is your hand raised, Jason? Yeah, go ahead.
And also at here you said about the argument. This argument is not the argument that we use fists and stuff. The here argument is not the kind of argument maybe we have a recess or something. It is a kind of people talking beside the people, trying to convince them that you need to do this thing or you need to not do this thing or blah blah blah.
Okay, Hanyu?
We usually start off an introduction of an essay. We can usually use like these words, or can we use like buckle up and let's explore the place or something like that?
So something like that, where you're speaking directly to your reader. That's almost working in the second person. This can work depending on the type of essay that you are writing. It is certainly an engaging technique to say, buckle up as we dive in or as we lift off into space to explore the stars. And we could be writing an expository essay all about space. Is that a raised hand or just a pen?
Oh, it's just a pen, sorry.
Okay, just want to make sure. So we say hook because we don't want our reader just reading over the essay and not really paying attention. If you ever find yourself reading over a few sentences in something and then you forget why you were reading it, and then you go back and you have to start again. The hook should make use, as Jason had pointed out, of literary devices. Those are usually helpful. Something that
and the hook will actually make the reader want to read your essay. Actually, the hook and the conclusion actually lead the 50% of the claims convincing. If you don't have a good hook, then you actually, this claim is not a good claim. I mean, the essay.
Possibly, but we can always get rid of the introduction and conclusion, and the body paragraphs, if they're written well, will
Yeah,
still
it
do
can
their
maybe
job.
be still convincing, but but if your body and your introduction and your conclusion is all good, then it will be more convincing.
Yes, where did my pencil go? Ah, there it is. I'm just trying to grab my notebook.
Oopsies.
There it is. Okay. Okay, so let me just take a quick note. All right, very good. So when let's see. Yes. So where was I? Right. As we grab our readers' attention, we want to ease them into the topic that we are going to be discussing, or perhaps convincing, persuading, exploring with our reader. That's where we take our what we would call either your connecting information, your background information, your preamble, everything and anything that we want our reader to know about prior to getting to our thesis. In a research essay, if you aren't trying to convince me of something, then you usually write what's known as an explanatory thesis, where we simply let our reader know the primary focus of what we're trying to explain within the essay. Your body paragraphs.
Oh, body is very easy. Body.
Yeah.
It's actually the three
Hold on,
main part.
Jason, hold on. Hanyu had his hand raised. If we could get Hanyu, go ahead.
Oh yeah.
So can I have a quick snack, just please?
So you need a what?
A quick nap.
Nap, because I have to eat
You can
breakfast.
eat. I don't mind that. That's fine. You're in your own home. So the body of any essay, that's where the most important information is going to be contained. So if here's a quick question concerning the conclusion, actually. Frank, perhaps you can tell me this.
All right, about the conclusion, you mean?
The question that I'm about to ask about the conclusion, yes. In my conclusion, let's say I've added a detail that I have not written about within the body of my essay. Should that detail be there?
Well, I guess it could because, well, in some particular in something particular, for example, you want to use this detail to make your either make your tone stronger or make your fact clearer. Yes, I guess you can.
Okay. Okay. You're right, it does in fact depend. Although the typical rule that we do follow is we do not include new information in a conclusion. Your body paragraphs should all contain every piece of information that you want. However, the part where it depends is if we are writing up the conclusion of the conclusion, and we are trying to leave our reader with some food for thought, or perhaps urge them on to do some investigation of their own, or dig deeper into a particular subject, or at least cause them to be curious, then we might be able to introduce something that isn't of great importance, but still perhaps provides us with something a little new. Could be a useful trivia fact, useful trivia. Could be a piece of trivia or maybe some useful information, some direction. And then when we write the final sentence in a introductory paragraph or your body paragraphs, we always have to be able to move into our next paragraph smoothly. Now, sometimes we can use transition phrases and transition words. That can work. But part of the art of writing an essay, and yes, it is an art. You can structure it and be rather sequential and logical in how you formulate your essays, but speaking is an art, and so is writing. The way we write and the way we speak should mirror one another. So rather than calling each sentence at the end of a paragraph other than your conclusion itself a concluding sentence, we like to think of them as leading sentences. We have to lead our reader and their attention from our first paragraph into the next paragraph. Typically, what we can do is we can include keywords or phrases. Oh, James, nice hat. Some keywords or phrases that will link to the first sentence of that next paragraph. And when we start taking a look at specific essays, I will show you what I'm talking about with that. Once we get to a conclusion, we want the conclusion to mirror, to some degree, the way our introduction has been set up. So a good introduction should somehow connect with your reader, either at an intellectual level or perhaps even at an emotional level. So telling your reader a joke, or perhaps stating something that you know that most of your readers will disagree with, but now because they're curious, they want to read so that way they can go, ha, I figured out how you feel, like how you figured that out, so that means you're wrong. But that's a clever way of grabbing someone's attention, convincing them of something or trying to make it sound like you're going to convince them of something that's not true. Like if I tried to tell you that vegetables don't exist, and then I led you through this idea of, well, what's a potato? It's just a tuber. That's not a vegetable. Or what is lettuce? It's just a leafy green. And then I can lead you down this little rabbit hole of nonsensical facts, but that still will grab your attention. So you don't have to think of it in terms of like a single sentence. Your introduction can be several sentences. We don't want to spend too much time on it, of course. But again, as I was saying, in a conclusion, we want to mirror that structure or the feeling of that introductory paragraph. It gives us this sense of finality. We are now like reaching full circle, and we've come to the point where, all right, you are complete, or you have finished reading through the most important details of the essay. Here is a bit of a reminder of what we've discussed, just in case I lost you along the way, and a restatement of a thesis, as well as potential future directions or comments or thoughts. So that's one general way to look at essay writing. But here is an example paragraph that is from an argumentative essay. And you'll see that we have our introductory sentence, then we have our background information, and that is 2 sentences long. So we don't really want to think of such a rigid structure as one sentence, one sentence, one sentence. We want to think of it as sections or subsections. So we've got an introduction, that is part 1 or section 1 of an essay. And then subsection 1 is your introduction, subsection 2. It all depends on how you like to frame it or visualize it. And then in this paragraph, we then get to our thesis. And since this is an argumentative essay, it's not necessarily trying to make you change your mind, but it should be providing a very strong case that allows us to think as a reader and decide for ourselves. And there's nothing more convincing than making someone believe that they made up their own minds. And you'll see that there are 3 key parts to a thesis, and we'll talk about that in detail when we speak about very specific parts. But just to quickly sum it up, we've got our topic, we've got our primary assertion or the position we are taking on the topic, and our reason, or sometimes we provide multiple reasons. That should be followed by our major claims or areas of focus, depending on the style and type of essay, and then a final leading sentence. So as I was saying with the lead, and Jason, yes?
Actually, the claim can be a broken claim or a regular claim. And regular claim is actually a claim that an essay that have a claim at the first note and introduction and claim and evidence and then reason and then rebuttal. No, and a counterclaim and a rebuttal and a conclusion. But a broken claim might be like it still have all of those elements, but some of the, for example, the counterclaim doesn't make any sense. That's called a broken claim, that the claim doesn't make sense.
Yes, so I believe what you're identifying is the validity of an argument. And providing a counterclaim, you can in fact argue via counterclaim. You've got
Actually, a counterclaim might be like this. You might say that exercises are not good for your body and it may harm your body, but in the report of blah 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 year of blah 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 where, it says that the person exercising and the person not exercising, the person exercising can live more than the person not exercising. So that shows that exercising are very important. So that
is
means
very
we
and
exercise more every day. That's actually what a counterclaim and a rebuttal fits. A
no,
counterclaim
that is a rebuttal, what you've just stated, but we'll get to that because a counterclaim is a specific type of argumentation that we can provide.
Yeah, actually, counterclaim is a little bit hard.
Yeah, so the term we would use for that is reductio ad absurdum, which means reducing things to the absurd. So you can provide me an example of what not to do as a way to convince me to do something positively. So we could provide examples, let's say, of taking care of a pet. So Frank or James, because I haven't heard from you yet. What are some things that we should not do when we own a pet?
Oh, well, I'll try to not feed them
Yeah,
I have
so
or harm them
or harm them. Han, you saw your hand first, and then James.
I have one.
So we couldn't give unhealthy food or anything. We don't care about the pets. Even if you buy a pet, you have to care the pet. So you maybe want to give it healthy food, like
Okay.
for pet food and water, healthy water, and
Yeah,
not to
water.
harm, to care, to wash them, to clean them.
All right. And
But
then,
if you don't leave them, you don't care them, they die.
that's correct. And then James, you had a comment?
Yeah, I have one.
Yeah?
If you have a cat and a dog, never put them together.
I had a cat and a dog. They got along fine for the most part. Well, they got along fine for the
Well,
most
actually,
part.
it depends.
I
Yeah,
tried
it all depends on the cat
If you
and the
put a
dog.
cat to an IKEA, it'll be fine.
You know what happened? They made the whole living room kind of like a war field.
Yeah, that can happen. Although there are plenty of people. I have
And my dad just broke my cat Mimi, and I was like, "Oh, you two might get in good shape in the living room. So I just let you guys go in the living room." And then 5 minutes later, I heard some racky sound in the living room. I went there. The whole living room was like a battlefield. I'd be like, "Ah!"
that is quite the excitement. So as I was talking about leading statement, or sorry, we'll finish up with the opposite.
90 degrees like this.
James, let's bring that in so that we can finish our point here. So all these examples of what not to do. So we provide this example of owner A did not care about the cleanliness of their pet's water bowl, nor the source of their pet's food. The pets promptly became sick and passed away. This would be providing an example of someone that did all the wrong things in caring for a pet. this would be one way that we could argue and convince someone that caring for a pet is important, or that it is a large responsibility to take on. So that is just one way. Or we can set out to prove that our initial point is wrong, but if we end up with absurd results, or we end up disproving our initial point of trying to disprove ourselves, then we also are creating that form of counterclaim. Although typically we refer to a counterclaim as a claim that is contrary to the thesis or major claim that you are purporting in your essay. So in terms of leading sentence, and here's just a quick example, we see that there are going to be similarities in wording and theme from the end of this introductory paragraph to the start of this paragraph here. We see students are growing during their education, becoming adults, and a rather important trait of becoming adults is that of being responsible. Then our next paragraph is going to focus on responsibility. Students may learn responsibility through their favorite Can we mute ourselves while we're shouting in our homes, please?
Let's Ross, let's mute them. You have a right. Let's mute them all. Mute. Jacqueline, I can mute them. Yeah, let's mute them all.
Yeah.
Can you? Jason and James, I need you guys mute your microphone.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you mute yourselves while you're talking, that would be
mute. That's a group lesson. Okay.
All right.
Mute. Whenever whoever question, raise your hand. Raise your hand. The teacher unmute. You can talk. All right. We'll take turns. All right.
All right. Yeah. Let's take turns. We're gonna have to do that. So we see that the lead here is the talking about responsibility, and then in the next paragraph, we are not lost. We naturally see students may learn responsibility, so we've got that keyword, responsible. So that is one easy and simple way of connecting your paragraphs without having to worry about connecting phrases and or words. Now let's take a quick look at how we outline, or what an outline might possibly look like. Now this is the second, sometimes third step in planning out an essay. Sometimes you may need to do a bit of research just to help jumpstart your brain. Other times you have plenty of ideas, so we may need to do some brainstorming first. And there are various brainstorming activities that we can do. Does anyone know of any brainstorming activities or have any preferred brainstorming activities that they use? Hanyu? You're going to want to unmute yourself.
Usually when you brainstorm, you first actually find your topic. And if I say I found a topic of penguins, I maybe want to find interesting facts about it, and adaptation facts, how they usually do, what they eat, and what are some. So actually, you can what predators do they have? But actually, that's informative. But if you want to entertain about penguins, you can say you have to care about, to persuade, to care. People should care about penguins. It's endangered, like that. If you want, kind of like that.
Yeah, okay. There's always a question that we should always be thinking about, especially when trying to convince or persuade. But in all essays, there's always this little question we should always think of that our reader might have on their mind. Does anyone know what that little question is that we should always be thinking of every time we write something in our essay for our reader? We always want to know, like, they might have this tiny little question
Right?
Yeah, there's a tiny question. What might that be?
So,
So if you're writing about penguins, I might have that tiny little question.
what is something interesting about penguins or something?
That might be a question, but not the question. Frank, did you have an idea?
What is the writer's motive?
Sorry, one more time.
What's the writer's purpose?
What's the writer's purpose? Getting a lot closer. What's another way of putting what's the writer's purpose?
Why is the writer writing it?
Why is the writer writing it? All right, we're still kind of beating around the bush, very close. Every time that a writer writes something or adds an idea or even chose the topic, there is something that we as the reader have a tiny little repeating question over and over again that we, the writer, always want to consider. So we sometimes rely on the hook to do this job completely, but we can't just let the
Why
hook.
should I read it?
Why should I, very close to the whole question, why should I, so if I'm writing about penguins or if I'm writing about the importance of homework, why should I,
Why should I? Uh,
why should
I
I,
believe the author?
that's also a good idea, but it's why should I care? The
Oh,
small
why should I?
question is the so what? So if I'm writing
Oh,
penguins and I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna add in their natural predators, so what? Why should I care? We always want to think that our reader might be thinking that. So that way it allows us to write more or explore our topic more deeply. And that is especially important in argumentative writing. Also, in all types of writing, we always want to keep the reader engaged and thinking about the particular topic. So here, like, here's one way to outline a particular paragraph. We typically want to start with an introductory sentence, or you can use a hybrid major claim and introductory sentence. And when I say major claim and minor claim, can anyone tell me what is a claim? I believe, Frank, we've discussed this before.
okay. The claim is just for opinion, and you need some facts to support it.
Yes. Now, this is a question for everyone. A claim and an opinion, which one of them can be right and which one of them can be wrong, or can one of them be
Maybe it's a
neither?
witness. It's a witness or something.
A witness. Well, you can use eyewitness as evidence, but the difference between claim and opinion, a very, very fine line. So I believe Jason actually pointed this part out, that if we simply are trying to, we'll be going till, I'm assuming 10, Michael. Oh, what was I going with that? Right, so if I'm trying to, like, make this claim that cake is better than pie, right now this is
That doesn't
just,
have.
that's just
That
an
definitely doesn't
opinion.
have a right or wrong.
That can't have a right or wrong, exactly. Opinions cannot have a right or wrong. Well, almost every opinion. There are some opinions that usually leads to poor behavior that we can see throughout human history. Those opinions are definitely wrong.
Those opinions can be considered as right or wrong, but it's still not right or wrong. Say, say for example, the opinion that, say in Aristotle's age, they think that the sun goes around the earth. That time is considered right, but if we come from now's perspective, it is kind of wrong. So it cannot be considered. So it can be considered right or wrong, but it still doesn't actually have a right or wrong.
Well, the point you're bringing up here is actually really good. So that, thankfully, science adopts this rule that something is true until it isn't, and usually when there's evidence to prove otherwise. It was initially just opinion that the Earth is the center of our solar system and the sun goes around us. But through observations, many cultures around the world figured out that can't possibly be true. Also, they figured out that the Earth was a big sort of ovoid shape rather than it being flat. But that's just complex human history. So a claim, sorry, Hanyu, did see your hand. Did you have something to say?
So I think opinion doesn't have just evidence. It's just having opinion by itself. It doesn't really explain. You mean planes like if opinion, I mean cars can fly, maybe it couldn't, but a claim maybe has a real evidence that it could.
Yes. So you point out something really important there. When we're talking about claims versus opinion, we're almost talking about what we could call a truth value. Saying cars can fly, we know this is just not true at all. But cars could fly.
And maybe could fly in the future.
Yeah, in the future, there
Maybe
we go. So that
maybe when cars can fly, you're already in the home, sitting on a wheelchair, and we're already running companies and stuff. Maybe
the echo coming from Jason and James, because you guys are so close together, is amusing. And also, it's times like these that I feel like I've been lied to by the Jetsons, because according to them, we should have been flying around in flying cars by now. But I guess that was a long time ago. Also, according to Transformers, Unicron should have eaten Earth or tried to by now. But I guess I'm just that old. So with a claim, we can establish whether or not something can be considered true, and this ties into Frank's point. I see Michael understands what I'm talking about. But whereas an opinion, there is no truth value that we can really assign to it. So with science, at one point, yes, it was fact that the Earth was the center of our solar system or universe and that the sun revolved around us. But with evidence, we're like, hold on, we've got to rewrite this now. So everything that we know about space and black holes, even like gravity itself, it's all just a theory. But it's very the theory of gravity, for example, is very strongly supported. And there's one thing that science likes to typically say, rather than proving something to be true, and we just use that as a shortcut word, proof, or evidence and proof, we provide a strong case, or there is strong evidence for this as being fact. But science likes to stay on the fence or skeptical. They like to say, well, for now, this is the most true that we can possibly get about something, because black holes at one point were just a theory until we found evidence of them. I don't think we've ever seen evidence of white holes, but it stands to reason if black holes exist, well, the other side should be a white hole, but that's neither here nor there. But science always evolves. So what we might write in one essay in a decade from now may no longer be true because science may have adapted. Things may have changed, but opinions like pie is better than cake or cake is better than pie, we can't really argue these until we add something specific to them. So we would be adding a criteria. So if we wanted to try and say that cake is better than pie or pie is better than cake, we would need to have some kind of unit of measurement to use to say, okay, which one meets the mark the best? So if we're saying perhaps which is more versatile, cake or pie, well, cake is almost always a dessert. I don't know of any food or meal that is made of cake, but I do know of many meals that are pies. Meat pie, turkey pie. Turkey pie is one of my favorites. You can put plenty of like savory things into pie and it still is relatively healthy. Whereas cake, I don't think so. So if we want to talk about like how healthy something is, then yeah, we would say pie is better than cake in that respect. So then we are adding a criteria or a set of rules that we need to follow. That's usually going to be important and the reason why we have various levels in terms of claims. So your thesis is built up of a claim with another claim. And your major claim is just in a more narrow, more specific type of claim. So it's in a more specific category. And then you have subclaims. These are the most important claims of all, because without them, your major claims do not stand a chance. And without major claims, your thesis doesn't work. It's just you stating your opinion, your perhaps well-supported opinion. But like if we were saying that smoking is strongly associated with lung cancer, and so therefore we should be able to safely say that smoking causes cancer. Now, without any evidence, this is just opinion with some sound logic. It doesn't quite work until we provide the evidence for it. So as we see here, this little example, our major claim is broken down into 3 specific subclaims. And one thing that we really want to make sure to do in our essay is each body paragraph or each major claim should be standalone. So if I wanted to take out a whole body paragraph and replace it, I should be able to do that without the other 2 paragraphs being affected. Because if the strength of those 2 paragraphs changes, at least in an argumentative or persuasive essay, then that paragraph, perhaps the body paragraph, may not be doing its job very well. Sometimes this is unavoidable, but most of the time that's what we should be aiming for. Now, naturally, if you are writing to inform your reader, or if you are telling a story, this doesn't quite work the same way. Or writing a narrative essay, like your experience the first time that you visited a theme park or a museum or a science center or another country, then you need that sequence of events. That's going to be important. And rather than having a major claim, you would have one major event in that series of events, and then you would have specific moments from that specific time. But the general point being, a thesis is going to be your broadest, widest point that you are making or that you are focused on. A major claim just narrows it down, and a subclaim is very narrow, almost like blinders on a horse, so that way they only see exactly what you want them to see. When we give a subclaim, we always need evidence. Now, we will talk about something known as ethos, pathos, and logos. These are the what some will call the rhetorical triangle, or the triangle of rhetoric, or Aristotle's pyramid of trust. We always need to be able to provide evidence because we ourselves, even if we're talking about ourselves, we are not considered experts. Like, why should you listen to me if I am not an expert in this field? That's why we always have evidence. And also we want everyone else, just like in science, to be able to go out and see if they can either find the same evidence or find evidence that disproves the evidence that I have. That's the way science typically works. At one point in history, when people were trying to figure out what electricity actually was, there were competing theories. And I believe at one point, there was a belief that electricity was a fluid. which is, I don't know how we came to that, but we did at one point. So we have our subclaims, we have our evidence, and then lastly, we can't just provide evidence. If I just provided you with a set of numbers, would that do anything for you at all if I said like 42, 8, and 12%? Would that mean anything?
Nope. Nope.
Not
Yeah,
at
no.
all, no. But if I
No.
start to give meaning to it, so some kind of explanation at the very least. So 42, that is the famous answer to the great question asked in Douglas Adams's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't remember the other numbers. 12%, I just kind of made up. They say 49.7% of statistics are made up on the spot. Ha ha ha. It's a really bad joke. But at least, thank you. At least we are providing some kind of information that goes with this data. If we are just simply saying that the sky is blue, I need to know why you're telling me this. This is your set of reasoning and or explanation as to why.
Why should I care about sky blue?
Exactly. Why should we care about the sky? That is what your reasoning and your explanation is for. You can call this your explication if you would like. It does the explaining. It also links that evidence directly to the claim that you are currently trying to support using this information. And then your conclusion of any paragraph, which again, the final sentence should lead into the next paragraph. We want those connecting phrases or words. And if we can't, then that's when we rely on, sorry, not connecting phrases, but if we have the similar wording or key terms within, just as I had shown you up here, with the responsible and then responsibility, the key theme that's being connected. If we can't do that, then we simply, of course, would rely on these connective words like secondly, consequently, as a result of any kind of coordinating conjunctions. And now you can see this is what your sort of blank outline for any kind of argumentative essay may start to look like. Sometimes you'll be asked to provide it in a PEI format. So points, evidence, and importance. The importance, there it is again. Why should I care? It's always that little, so what? Why should I care? We always want to provide that little extra step. Of course, with drafting, and there are at least 3 copies of an essay. You've got your rough draft, one that, depending on your writing style, might just be thrown together, or you just type it up as quickly as you can to get all your thoughts out on a page, and then you have to do revision. So then there's your revised draft. And then we like to try and get a peer to revise for us as well, because 2 heads are better than 1. So that's always a good choice. And then eventually we have our final copy. So we go from research or brainstorming. Brainstorming typically should come first, then a bit of research. Unless you're completely stumped on your topic, then go and do some research. We always want to make sure that any research we do, we record all of our sources. You never know when you're going to need to cite something. And essentially, the rule that I encourage is if you put your eyes on a source and you possibly may have even gotten a tiny idea from it, record that source.
He's eating lunch.
Pardon
James
me?
eating lunch.
That's okay. So record that source so that way you can keep it in your works cited, just in case you ended up using it. Or in APA, you use your references. Or if your teachers allow you, you can just simply call it a bibliography. Although back in my day, when we said bibliography, we only meant books. And then we would have to say works cited for anything and everything that was actually like cited literally in the essay. And then a references would be anything and everything that we made reference to without using direct quotes. And the bibliography would just either be books or every source and every source that you looked at, even if you didn't use it in your essay.
Websites also.
Yeah, Could be websites. Websites nowadays are the number one thing to use, although it's a little hard to find good information with how many independent sources there are out there that are not actually authorities in the subject they're discussing. That's why it's important to always be able to figure out whether or not a source is a credible source of information. Like if I had a student ask me, I think today, no, sorry, yesterday. It was yesterday. They asked me if Reddit was a valid source of information.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
I don't think.
it is not. No. Even if someone says, well, I have a PhD in astrophysics, I don't care. You're on Reddit, so I'm not listening to you. But if you have published papers, I'm happy to read those. That's a whole other thing. Now, when we talk about a thesis or theses, that's their plural, a thesis statement, that is probably one of the most important statements. Now, typically your schools are going to want you to write your thesis as a singular sentence, so that's why we call it a thesis statement. But in the future, you will have room to write your thesis as multiple sentences, if not an entire paragraph. But we will focus primarily on writing our thesis as a single statement. You have your initial working thesis. Now we call it a working thesis because it has the topic, it has the position you are going to take on that topic, and it will have the 3 reasons you plan to use to support your position. That is your working thesis. And let's say you figure out what all 3 of these things have in common, you end up with a universal thesis. But if you don't figure out what these 3 things have in common, you end up with the big 3, because that would be what makes it into your final copy. So if we take a quick look up here, this is your universal thesis. And since we have the time, I will quickly explain that here. So this essay was primarily focused, it was the question itself was, should students have jobs in school? Now, one thing that we will talk about in the process of writing is making sure that we always know exactly what we are talking about. So when I say students, well, a lot of you guys aren't yet in high school, and it's typically illegal for children of your age to hold jobs, because I don't want to see a 3rd grader in a grocery store stocking shelves. So like a 3rd grader is a student. So I might be more specific and say secondary school students, because now I only have to talk about one set of ages. Rather, yes, Hanyu?
So, what a 3rd grader shops, well, maybe they are maybe there's only their grandma. Usually people in China, usually there's people
那个盖子盖
with
好，
children shop.
饮料的盖子盖好，这样
Children will help.
把它盖
Children
好。
will help
Yeah, they'll
shop.
help their
for that.
relatives like
Yeah,
do the.
yeah, help relatives.
Yeah,
That's a
children.
different thing. Yeah,
But that isn't actually like working part-time. That is
Yeah.
just helping.
exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. So that it's a good point. But we typically don't want to go to a grocery store and see like a 3rd grader stocking shelves because they haven't, like, how are they doing that, first of all, when they should be in school or having fun or studying?
Maybe
But in this
Saturdays
case,
or
we make
something.
it very easy for ourselves by saying high school. So now we know, okay, I don't have to talk about university students. I don't have to talk about elementary students. So I only really have to focus on grades 9 to 12. Easy peasy. So our topic was, should students have jobs in school? So we say students, they should have a part-time job. So we even specified the type of job, part-time. We focused on the topic, which is, our position, which is that students should have a part-time job. And then we add this specific modifier throughout their time in high school. And then here is our universal reason, that all 3 of the reasons we can shrink into. So it is beneficial for their future as members of society, which is a fancy way of saying it is good for them so that way when they grow up, they'll be good adults. Now, we see these three things here in color. If I didn't have a universal reason, so the being beneficial or being helpful so that way they can grow up to be good adults, I would say that because, like, they should have the part-time job throughout high school because they learn responsibility. So that could be put into the big three or the working thesis. Am I slowed down there? Hopefully that picks up. Then there's also that students will learn useful skills. And lastly, students can earn extra pocket change. I could have all of that in my thesis rather than the beneficial for the future members of society as future members of society. So let's say I'm stuck and I can't figure that part out. I just use those three things. Then I elaborate on what I mean by that in the following major claim sentences. And then I've got my leading sentence. Okay, so we've got our working, we've got our universal. How are we doing on time? We're nearly done. So that's your basic outline. And then those are practice activities for rearranging. We don't have to worry about that. Now, every time we write something like an argumentative essay, we should always be thinking of both sides of an argument. If we don't consider both sides of an argument, why might that not be so great? Like when you're thinking, well, not when you're writing it, but as you are trying to set up to write your essay, why is it important that we consider both or multiple sides of an argument? Any thoughts?
So you mean you want to be as neutral as you can?
As neutral as you can, yes. Eliminate bias. That's a very good
All right.
point.
Then you should probably like first you just sort out the contrary things. For example, say if learn skill and takes away and additional stress are like contrarial, then you should like put them in comparison in like one paragraph, and then that can probably tell. So that will be useful enough to show like the reader the pros and cons of one thing, and then you can follow on with this structure.
Yes, and that would be a different type of essay. That if you do not take a specific stance, if you do not decide that students should or should not, you can say there are multiple reasons to consider as to why students should or should not hold part-time jobs while they are in high school. And then you can do that compare and contrast, or pro and con, or cause and effect style essay. We also write both sides of an argument or multiple sides of an argument because let's say we really agree with one side, but we can only come up with one or two reasons for that. But then we go and write for the side that we don't really agree with, but we're able to come up with more ideas than we initially started with. We've now figured out, it's actually going to be easier to write for something that I don't quite believe in. Because that's the one big thing about, or drawback, I guess, with argumentative writing, is sometimes you might have to write about topics that you don't agree with. In which case, we have to learn to be completely neutral or objective or unbiased. And then we can represent something fairly. So one question that I really like to use that I currently have students writing essays for, and I've had one of my sixth graders, well, that was like almost 2 years ago now. She did a speech on this topic and advanced twice. She didn't make it to the final set of competitions, but the question was, is a hot dog a sandwich? And that's quite a fun argument because you can decide either way, it is or it is not. Although, funny enough, I believe a court in New York declared the hot dog to be a sandwich. But if I asked you guys, is a hot dog a sandwich? What would you say?
No, of course not.
Well,
Okay.
wait, a hot dog.
So I think
is, the definition of sandwich is, well, I could just assume that The hot dog
Sandwich.
is like a sandwich with two breads molded together.
Okay, and can you?
What
Are
I
you going to say?
think, so what I think about a sandwich is, so for a meaning of the sandwich
Wait,
is
actually, let me
it's kind of like a burger.
Hold on, Frank. Let Honey finish.
So it's just a triangular shaped bread with additional things inside like ham and cheese. But what a hot dog is usually a bread inside there's not just a hot dog, not any else, just hot dog. But if a sandwich, you can add everything. You can add lettuce, you can add ham, you can add cheese, everything. But hot dog is a long oval shaped bread. Inside there's a just a hot dog.
Okay.
Just,
And Frank, sorry, you were going to continue saying?
All right, I googled it, and sandwich means an item of food consisting of two pieces of bread with meat, cheese, or other filling within them, eaten as a light meat. So I guess I can say, so it needs two or more slices of bread, and hot dogs are ones. I don't know if it's slice or bread or what. One. Oh, sorry, I know. One piece of bread, I think. So
Yeah,
it can be
they're
generally considered as not, but on the other hand, I can consider it as like two slices of bread molded together, since that would happen.
you could, but to your two slices of bread, I could provide the counterclaim or just simple question. What about open-faced sandwiches? That only needs one slice of bread.
So
Open-faced sandwiches, yeah.
open space, yeah, there's some of them, but at least a hot dog is just a hot dog, only a thing
Oh
inside.
wait,
And
sandwich?
We could, yeah. So we will pick up this discussion afterwards because we are out of time. It is quite late for me. So we will go over the actual material once I've been told where we are using, where we are placing either in OneDrive or Google Drive, and you will all have a copy of Great Writing. And of course, there will be supplementary material because I do need to tweak the Great Writing's approach to essay writing just a little bit. And we will go through various styles of essays, how to write them, and we will be writing essays. There are various activities that we will be doing for homework. I don't think I'll be assigning homework today. I'll find out whether or not there will be homework for you. I'm not quite sure how that's working right now. But before we wrap things up today, it was a pleasure to meet everyone. Are there any last minute questions, comments, or concerns?